The morning sun came through the tall windows of Hambit Academy. The light was warm and golden. It touched the desks, the walls, and the faces of 30 students who sat in the classroom waiting for their teacher. The year was 2247. Earth had changed a lot in the last 50 years. Humans had discovered they were not alone in the universe. They had met other species from distant stars. They had joined something called the Galactic Federation. Now, humans and aliens lived together, worked together, and even studied together. Hambit Academy was one of the best schools in Neo-Sol. The old city of Sol had grown and changed over the centuries. Now, it was a massive place of tall buildings, flying vehicles, and technology that would seem like magic to people from the past. But inside the classroom, things felt normal. Students talked and laughed. Some finished homework at the last minute. Others just waited for class to begin. In the back row, near the window, sat a girl named Yuna. She was 18 years old. Her hair was long and black, tied in a simple ponytail. She wore the school uniform like everyone else. There was nothing special about her appearance. She was not the prettiest girl in class. She was not the smartest. She did not raise her hand to answer questions. She did not cause trouble. Most days, people forgot she was even there. Yuna liked it that way. Right now, she was drawing small pictures in her notebook. A flower, a cat, a spaceship. Her pen moved slowly across the paper. It was a simple metal pen, silver in color, nothing fancy. She had many pens like this one. She liked the weight of them in her hand. She liked the way they spun between her fingers when she was bored. Sitting next to her was a boy named Dohyun. He was her best friend and had been since they were children. Dohyun was thin and tall, with messy hair that never stayed flat no matter how much he tried to fix it. He was smart, very smart, but he was also nervous about everything. He worried about tests, about the future, about things that might never happen. "Did you study for the quiz?" Dohyun asked in a low voice. Yuna kept drawing. "There is a quiz?" Dohyun's eyes went wide. "Yuna, Mr. Park said last week there would be a quiz today." "I will be fine," Yuna said. She did not look worried at all. Dohyun shook his head. He could never understand how she stayed so calm about everything. At the front of the class, a girl named Jiwoo stood up and asked everyone to quiet down. Jiwoo was the class president. She was responsible and serious. She had short hair and wore small glasses. When she spoke, people listened. "Mr. Park will be here soon," Jiwoo announced. "Please take your seats." Near the middle of the room sat Hana, a cheerful girl with a bright smile. She was talking to a group of students who did not look human at all. They were Valorians, exchange students from a planet called Valoria Prime. The Valorians were tall and thin, with skin that was light blue in color. They had large eyes and long fingers. They moved gracefully, like dancers. The Valorians considered themselves a very advanced species. Their civilization was millions of years old. They had technology that humans could barely understand. They had ended war and disease on their world long ago. They looked at humans the way an adult might look at a small child trying to do something difficult. "Your species is still so young," one of the Valorians said to Hana. His name was hard to pronounce, so everyone called him Vel. "You only joined the Federation 50 years ago. That is like 1 second in the history of the universe." Hana just smiled. She was too friendly to take offense. "We learn fast," she said. Another Valorian, a female with darker blue skin, spoke quietly to Vel in their own language. Yuna could not understand the words, but she could guess what they meant. The Valorian looked at the human students with something like pity in her large eyes. "They think we are weak," Yuna thought. "They think we are primitive." She kept drawing. She kept spinning her pen. The door opened, and Mr. Park walked in. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been a teacher for 30 years. He loved his students, human and alien alike. He carried a tablet under his arm and a cup of tea in his hand. "Good morning, everyone," Mr. Park said with a warm smile. "I hope you are ready to learn about the Third Galactic War today. It is a very important part of history." The students settled into their seats. Do-hyun took out his notebook. The Valorian sat with perfect posture. Hannah stopped talking and turned to face the front. Ji-woo sat down in her seat near the window on the other side of the room. Yuna put her pen down and looked at the teacher. She did not find history boring. She liked learning about the past. There were lessons hidden in old stories, lessons about survival, about strength, about what beings would do when they were pushed to their limits. Mr. Park began to speak about the war that had happened 1,000 years ago. It was a war between three great empires. Billions had died. Planets had been destroyed. In the end, the survivors had created the Galactic Federation to make sure such a war would never happen again. "Peace is precious," Mr. Park said. "It must be protected. That is why the Federation exists. That is why we learn about the past, so we do not repeat its mistakes." The Valorians nodded in agreement. They understood peace. They had lived in peace for 3,000 years. They had forgotten what it meant to fight. Yuna listened to the lesson, but part of her mind was somewhere else. She was thinking about her grandmother, a woman who had died 2 years ago. Her grandmother had been a soldier, a member of Earth's Special Forces. She had fought in small wars that nobody talked about. She had seen things that she never shared with anyone except Yuna. When Yuna was 4 years old, her grandmother had started teaching her. Not school subjects, but other things. How to move quietly. How to watch and wait. How to use anything as a weapon. How to survive. The universe is not safe. Her grandmother had told her many times. Peace is a gift, but it can be taken away in a moment. You must always be ready. Yuna had never told anyone about this training. Not even Do-hyun knew everything. To the world, she was just an ordinary girl who sat in the back of the class and drew pictures in her notebook. The lesson continued. The morning sun kept shining. Everything seemed normal and peaceful. But peace, as Yuna's grandmother had said, could be taken away in a moment. And that moment was coming very soon. 20 minutes into the lesson, the lights flickered. It was small at first. Just a quick flash. Like someone had turned them off and on again very fast. Mr. Park paused in the middle of his sentence and looked up at the ceiling. Some students glanced around. Then the lights came back to normal, and everyone relaxed. "Old building," Mr. Park said with a small laugh. "The electrical system needs an upgrade." Now, where was I? Ah, yes, the Treaty of 7 Stars. He continued speaking. Students went back to taking notes. The moment was forgotten. But Yuna did not forget. She had stopped drawing. Her pen was still in her hand, but her fingers had tightened around it. She looked at the windows, then at the door, then at the walls. Something felt wrong. The air felt different, heavier somehow. It was a feeling she could not explain, but she had learned to trust it. Her grandmother had called it the warning. It was like a small voice in the back of your mind that told you danger was coming. Most people ignored it. They told themselves they were being silly. They went back to their normal lives. Yuna never ignored it. She looked at Do-hyun. He was writing in his notebook, not worried about anything except the quiz that might come later. She looked at Hannah, who was listening to the teacher with a smile on her face. She looked at the Valorians, who sat perfectly still like beautiful statues. Nobody else felt it. Nobody else knew. Then the wall exploded. The blast came from the east side of the classroom. Pieces of concrete and metal flew through the air. The sound was deafening, like a giant hammer hitting the world. Students screamed and fell from their chairs. Dust and smoke filled the room. Desks were thrown across the floor. Windows shattered into 1,000 pieces. Yuna moved without thinking. She grabbed Do-hyun and pulled him down behind a fallen desk. Her body covered his. Pieces of debris hit her back, but she did not make a sound. When the dust began to clear, she looked up. There was a hole in the wall. It was large enough for a vehicle to pass through. Through the smoke, she could see figures moving. They stepped into the classroom one by one. There were 5 of them. They were not human. They were not Valorian. They were something else entirely. The creatures were tall, almost 7 feet in height. Their bodies were covered in hard shells, like the exoskeleton of an insect. Their color was dark brown, almost black. They had 4 arms, each ending in sharp claws that looked like knives. Their heads were long and narrow, with large compound eyes that saw in all directions. When they opened their mouths, there were rows of small, sharp teeth. Kreth raiders. Yuna had heard stories about them. Everyone in the galaxy had. The Kreth were pirates, criminals, slavers. They attacked ships and colonies. They took people and sold them to the highest bidder. Young people were especially valuable because they could be trained and sold as servants or worse. The Galactic Federation had been trying to stop them for centuries, but the Kreth were clever. They hid in the dark spaces between stars. They struck fast and disappeared faster. And now they were here. In a school. In her classroom, the lead raider stepped forward. It was larger than the others, with scars on its shell that showed it had survived many battles. It carried a weapon in one of its hands, something that glowed with a sickly green light. It made a clicking sound with its mouth. And a small device on its chest translated the clicks into words that everyone could understand. "Young ones," the raider said. Its voice was cold and empty, like the sound of stones rubbing together. "Healthy, valuable, you will come with us. If you cooperate, fewer of you will die. If you resist..." It raised its weapon and pointed it at a Valorian student who was frozen in fear. "You will learn what pain means." Some students were crying. Others were too scared to make any sound at all. The Valorians looked like they could not believe what was happening. Their large eyes were wide with terror. They had never faced violence like this. They did not know how to react. Mr. Park got to his feet slowly. His face was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but his expression was determined. He stepped forward, placing himself between the raiders and his students. "You will not take them," he said. His voice shook, but he did not move. "They are children. They are under my protection." The lead raider looked at Mr. Park for a moment. Then it made a sound that might have been laughter. One of its arms moved faster than the eye could follow. It struck Mr. Park in the chest and sent him flying across the room. He hit the far wall with a terrible sound and fell to the floor. He did not move. "Teacher!" Hannah screamed. Jiwoo covered her mouth with her hands. Tears ran down her face. Do-hyun grabbed Yuna's arm so hard it hurt. "We need to hide," he whispered. His voice was shaking. "We need to run. We need to." But Yuna was not listening. She was watching the raiders. She was counting them. 5. She was looking at their armor, their weapons, their movements. She was finding the weak points, the gaps in the exoskeleton, the places where the shell did not cover the flesh, underneath eyes, throat, the joints where the arms connected to the body, the soft tissue under the jaw. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. "When danger comes, you have 2 choices. You can be the prey, or you can be the predator. Choose." Yuna had made her choice a long time ago. She stood up. Do-hyun's hand fell away from her arm. He looked at her with wide, confused eyes. "Yuna, what are you doing?" She did not answer. She walked out from behind the desk and stood in the open. The raiders turned to look at her. One of them made a clicking sound that the translator turned into words. "A brave one." "Stupid, a brave." The lead raider pointed its weapon at her. "Get on the ground, human, or I will burn a hole through your chest." Yuna looked at the weapon. Then she looked at the raider's face, at its compound eyes that reflected her image 100 times. Her fingers tightened around the pen in her hand. The same silver pen she had been using to draw pictures just minutes ago. It was nothing special, just metal and ink. But in the right hands, anything could be a weapon. "No," she said quietly. The raider tilted its head, confused by her answer. It had never met a human who was not afraid. That confusion lasted exactly 1 second, and in the next 5 seconds, everything changed. Time seemed to slow down. Yuna could feel her heart beating in her chest, strong and steady. She could hear the frightened breathing of her classmates behind her. She could see every detail of the raiders in front of her, every scratch on their armor, every movement of their claws. Her grandmother had trained her for moments like this. Not in a gym or a training room, but in the real world. In forests and empty buildings and dark alleys. Her grandmother had taught her that real combat was not like the movies. It was not beautiful or dramatic. It was fast, ugly, and brutal. The one who won was not the strongest or the biggest. It was the one who moved first and did not hesitate. When you decide to fight, her grandmother had said, you do not think. You do not feel. You become the weapon. You become death itself. Yuna had never used her training to hurt anyone before. She had hoped she would never need to. But now, looking at Mr. Park lying motionless on the floor, looking at her classmates crying in fear, she knew that hope was gone. She breathed in once. She breathed out once. Then she moved. The first second began with the pen leaving her fingers. She did not throw it like a normal person would throw a ball. She threw it like a knife, with a quick snap of her wrist that sent it spinning through the air. The pen was not designed to be a weapon, but physics did not care about design. A small, hard object moving at high speed could pierce almost anything. The pen hit the lead raider directly in its right eye. The compound eye was the only part of the head that was not covered by the hard shell. The metal went through the soft tissue and into the brain behind it. The raider did not even have time to make a sound. It fell forward, dead before it hit the ground. 1 down. 4 to go. The other raiders did not understand what had happened. They had never seen a human move so fast. They had never seen anyone kill one of their kind with such a simple object. For a brief moment, they froze. That moment was all Yuna needed. The second found her already running. Not away from the raiders, but toward them. She grabbed Donshin's pen from his pocket as she passed. He was too shocked to react. She held the pen in her right hand, point forward, like a small dagger. The nearest raider raised its forearms to grab her. Its claws could cut through metal. If they touched her, she would be dead. But Yuna was not there when the claws came down. She slid under the raider's arms, her body low to the ground. As she passed beneath it, she drove the pen upward with all her strength. The pen entered the soft tissue under the raider's jaw, where the neck met the head. This was another gap in the armor, a small one that most people would never notice. But Yuna had been trained to see these things. The pen went deep, hitting something vital. The raider made a horrible gurgling sound and collapsed. 2 down. 3 to go. The third second brought danger. One of the remaining raiders fired its weapon at her. The green light flashed across the room. If it hit her, it would burn through her body like fire through paper. But Yuna had already seen the raider's arm moving. She had already read the direction of the shot. She threw herself to the side, grabbing a chair as she moved. The plasma bolt passed so close she could feel the heat on her skin. She did not stop. She used the chair like a tool, swinging it around to give herself momentum. Her body flew through the air toward the raider who had shot at her. The creature tried to fire again, but she was too close now. She brought the metal leg of the chair down on the place where its neck joined its body. The exoskeleton was hard, but this joint was weaker. It had to be, or the raiders could not move their heads. The metal leg hit with a crack that echoed through the room. The raider's body went stiff, and it fell. 3 down. 2 to go. The 4th second was the bloodiest. Yuna landed on the ground and rolled, grabbing her first pen from the body of the dead leader. The pen was wet with something that was not human blood, but she did not care. She wiped it once on her uniform and threw it again. The 4th raider had been trying to aim its weapon at her. It was too slow. The pen entered its throat, another soft spot in the armor. The creature dropped its weapon and clutched at its neck. Strange sounds came from its mouth as it tried to breathe and could not. Then it fell and was still. 4 down. 1 to go. The 5th second was almost peaceful. The last raider looked at Yuna. It looked at its 4 dead companions. Something changed in its compound eyes. Yuna had seen this look before, in the animals her grandmother had shown her during training. Fear. Pure, simple fear. The raider turned and ran toward the hole in the wall. It did not care about the mission anymore. It did not care about the young slaves it had come to take. It only wanted to escape, to survive, to get away from this human girl who had destroyed its entire team in the time it took to draw a breath. It did not get far. Yuna caught up with it in 3 steps. Her hand grabbed the back of its head. Her other hand grabbed its shoulder. She had learned this move from her grandmother when she was 12 years old. It was called the quiet end. It was fast and clean, and it made no sound except for a single snap. The last raider fell to the ground. It did not move again. 5 seconds. 5 raiders. 1 girl. Yuna stood in the silence that followed. Her breathing was calm. Her hands were steady. The bloodied pen was still in her grip. Around her lay the bodies of creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. She turned to look at her classmates. They were staring at her. All of them. Humans and Valorians alike. Their eyes were wide. Their mouths were open. Some of them had stopped crying. Some of them had started. Nobody said a word. Yuna looked down at herself. Her uniform was torn and dirty. There were strange colors on her clothes from the blood of the raiders. Her ponytail had come loose, and her hair hung around her face. She saw her reflection in a piece of broken glass on the floor. She looked like a stranger. She looked like something out of a nightmare. She looked like exactly what she was, a predator. Somewhere in the distance, she could hear alarms starting to ring. Help was coming. The danger was over. Yuna walked slowly back to where Do-yoon was sitting on the floor. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. He looked at her like he had never seen her before. She held out his pen to him. It was bent and covered in something dark. "Sorry," she said quietly. "I broke your pen." Do-hyun looked at the pen. Then he looked at her. Then, without warning, he started to laugh. It was a strange laugh, almost like crying, but it was laughter. Yuna did not understand why he was laughing. But after a moment, she felt something in her chest loosen. The cold, focused feeling that had filled her during the fight began to fade. Her hands started to shake, just a little. She sat down next to her friend and waited for help to arrive. The first responders arrived in less than 3 minutes. They came through the broken wall and through the classroom door, wearing armor and carrying weapons that glowed with energy. They were ready for a battle. What they found instead was a quiet room full of shocked students and 5 dead aliens. Medical teams came next. They checked the students for injuries. They put Mr. Park on a floating stretcher and took him away. One of the medics said he was alive. just unconscious. The news made Haya cry again, but this time with relief. Police officers walked around the room, taking pictures and asking questions. They looked at the bodies of the raiders with confusion on their faces. These creatures had armor that could stop most weapons. They were some of the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, and they had been killed with nothing but writing tools. Who did this? One of the officers asked. Nobody answered at first. Then, slowly, Do-Yoon raised his hand and pointed at Yuna. The officer looked at her. Yuna looked back. She was sitting on the floor with her back against the wall. Her hands were in her lap. She looked like any other student, tired and scared after a terrible experience. You? The officer said. He did not believe it. Yes, Yuna said simply. The officer opened his mouth to say something else, but another officer touched his arm and whispered in his ear. The first officer's expression changed. He looked at Yuna again, this time with something different in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or fear. Or both. They did not ask her any more questions after that. The students were taken to a different room while the classroom was cleaned. They sat in small groups, some talking quietly, others just staring at nothing. Medical staff brought them water and blankets. Counselors came to talk to anyone who needed help. The Valorian students sat together in a corner. They had not spoken since the attack. Their blue skin looked pale, almost gray. Their large eyes kept moving toward Yuna, then quickly looking away. Finally, one of them stood up and walked over to where Yuna was sitting. It was the female Valorian with the darker blue skin, the one who had been whispering about humans earlier. Her name was something like Sela in the common language. Sela stopped in front of Yuna. Her hands were shaking. Her voice was soft and uncertain. "What are you?" she asked. The room went quiet. Everyone was listening. Yuna looked up at the Valorian. She thought about the question for a moment before answering. "I am human," she said. "That is not possible," Sela said. Her voice was stronger now, but also more frightened. "Humans are. You are supposed to be a young species. Primitive. You joined the Federation only 50 years ago. You should not be able to do what you did." Yuna did not know what to say. She had never thought of herself as special. Her grandmother had trained her, yes, but she always believed that any human could learn the same skills if they tried hard enough. It was Jiwoo who spoke next. The class president had been quiet since the attack, but now she stood up and faced the Valorians with a calm expression. "Do you know how humans survived on Earth?" Jiwoo asked. The Valorians looked confused. Sela shook her head. "Earth is what the Federation calls a Class 4 world," Jiwoo continued. "Do you know what that means?" Sela's eyes widened slightly. "Class 4? That is a death world. A planet with extreme conditions that should not support intelligent life." "Correct," Jiwoo said. "Earth is high gravity compared to most inhabited planets. It has extreme temperatures, from burning deserts to frozen wastelands. It has thousands of species of predators, some of which hunted humans for food. It has natural disasters like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, floods, and storms that can destroy entire cities." She paused and looked around the room at her classmates. Human and alien alike. "Humans did not evolve in a peaceful garden," she said. "We evolved in a war zone. Every day of our history was a fight for survival. We had to become strong, fast, and clever just to stay alive. We had to learn how to hunt before we became the hunted. We had to learn how to kill, or we would be killed." The Valorians were silent. They had known some of this information, but hearing it now, after what they had witnessed, made it feel different. More real. More frightening. Do-Yoon spoke up from his seat next to Yuna. "The Galactic Federation has a classification system for species. based on how dangerous they are. Most intelligent species are level 2 or 3, peaceful, civilized, built for cooperation, not conflict. He looked at Yuna, then back at the Valorians. Humans are classified as level 7 adaptive predators, he said quietly. The same classification as the Kreth Raiders. A heavy silence filled the room. Hana, who had been listening without speaking, finally raised her voice. She was sitting near the Valorians, and she looked at them with a gentle expression. "We're not monsters," she said. "We do not want to hurt anyone. Most humans live their entire lives without ever being in a fight. We have learned to be peaceful. We have learned to work with others. We have learned to be kind." She smiled softly. "But that does not change what we are. Deep inside, under all the civilization and politeness, we are still survivors. We are still fighters. When someone we care about is in danger, that part of us wakes up." Sela looked at Hannah, then at Yuna, then at the other human students in the room. She was starting to understand something that her people had never thought about before. The humans had not been fooling anyone. They had not been hiding their true nature out of deception. They simply did not think about it. To them, the ability to fight and kill was as natural as breathing. It was always there, sleeping quietly beneath the surface, waiting to be needed. "Why did you not tell us?" Sela asked. "Why did you let us think you were weak?" Yuna answered this time. Her voice was tired, but honest. "We did not want to scare you," she said. "We did not want you to look at us and see enemies. We wanted to be your friends. We wanted to be part of the Federation, to learn from you and share what we know. We thought if we showed you our gentle side first, you would have time to understand us before you saw this." She gestured at the room, at the memory of what had happened. "We are not proud of what we can do," she continued. "It is just part of who we are. We cannot change it. We can only choose when to use it." Sela was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She sat down on the floor next to Yuna, crossing her long legs beneath her. "I was wrong about you," Sela said softly. "About all of you. I thought you were lesser beings, just because your civilization is young. I thought you had nothing to teach us." She looked at Yuna with her large, dark eyes. "I was a fool. Today, you saved my life. You saved all of our lives. And you did it with nothing but a piece of metal meant for writing. I do not understand how that is possible. But I am grateful, and I would like to learn." Yuna stared at her for a moment. Then, slowly, a small smile appeared on her face. "I can teach you how to throw a pen," she offered. "But I cannot promise you will be any good at it." Sela made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was a strange sound, like bells ringing, but it was definitely laughter. Around the room, some of the tension began to fade. Humans and Valorians looked at each other with new eyes. Not as strangers anymore, but as something else. Maybe, Yuna thought, something good could come from this terrible day after all. 3 days passed after the attack on Hambit Academy. The news had spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Every planet, every station, every colony had seen the footage. Security cameras in the classroom had recorded everything. The video of an 18-year-old human girl killing 5 Kreth Raiders in 5 seconds had been watched billions of times. Some species were amazed. Some were impressed. Some were terrified. On the planet Valoria Prime, government officials held emergency meetings to discuss what they had learned about humanity. On the Kreth homeworld, Raider clans argued about whether to seek revenge or stay far away from Earth. On 100 other worlds, beings who had barely noticed humans before now studied them with careful attention. Everything had changed, but for Yuna, life felt almost normal. She went back to school the day after the attack. The classroom had been repaired quickly. the wall rebuilt, the windows replaced. If you did not know what had happened, you would think nothing was different. But of course, everything was different. Students looked at her differently now. They did not avoid her exactly, but they gave her more space. They were polite, even friendly, but there was something new in their eyes when they talked to her. Something like caution. Yuna understood. She did not blame them. The Valorians had gone back to their home planet for a while, to recover and to think about what they had experienced. Sela had sent Yuna a message before leaving, thanking her again and promising to return soon. "I still want you to teach me," she had written. "Not just how to throw a pen, but how to be brave like you." Yuna had not known what to write back. She did not think of herself as brave. She had just done what needed to be done. But she had thanked Sela for her kind words and said she looked forward to seeing her again. Mr. Park had recovered from his injuries. He was back at school today, teaching with the same warm smile as before. The only difference was a small bandage on his forehead and the way he looked at Yuna sometimes, with an expression she could not quite understand. At lunch, Yuna sat alone on the steps outside the school building. It was a quiet spot, away from the noise of the cafeteria. She had a sandwich in her hand, but she was not really eating. She was thinking her grandmother would have been proud of her. Or maybe not proud exactly, but satisfied. She had always said that training was useless if you never used it. "I hope you never need what I teach you," she had told Yuna many times. "But if you do need it, I want you to be ready." Yuna had been ready, but she had not expected how she would feel afterward. She heard footsteps and looked up. Jiwo was walking toward her, carrying 2 bottles of water. The class president sat down on the step next to Yuna without asking permission. "You should eat," Jiwo said, handing her one of the bottles. "I'm not hungry," Yuna replied. "Eat anyway. Your body needs fuel to recover." Yuna almost smiled. That was such a Jiwoo thing to say. Practical, sensible, caring in a way that did not demand attention. They sat in silence for a while, looking out at the school courtyard. Other students walked by, some glancing at them, others pretending not to notice. "The whole galaxy is talking about you," Jiwoo said finally. "You are famous now, I know." Yuna did not sound happy about it. "Does it bother you?" Yuna thought about the question before answering. "I did not do what I did to become famous. I did it because people were going to get hurt. Because Mr. Park was on the ground. Because Hannah was scared. Because Dohyun needed me." She looked down at her hands. They were clean now, but she could still feel the weight of the pen, the resistance of flesh and armor. "I would do it again," she said quietly. "If I had to, I would do it 100 times. But I do not want people to look at me like I am a weapon. I am still just me." Jiwoo nodded slowly. "You are still just you," she agreed. "The same girl who doodles in her notebook and forgets about quizzes. The same girl who has been Dohyun's friend since childhood. The same girl who never raises her hand in class even when she knows the answer." She turned to look at Yuna directly. "But now we know something else about you too. And I do not think that is a bad thing. I think it is good to know what you are capable of. It means we can trust you. It means we know that when things go wrong, you will be there." Yuna did not know what to say to that. She took a bite of her sandwich instead. Jiwoo stood up and brushed off her uniform. "By the way, the Federation Council has been asking about you. They want to know if you would be interested in speaking to them about human capabilities. Apparently, a lot of species are reconsidering their opinions about Earth." "What kind of reconsidering?" "The kind where they realize humans are not the cute new members of the Federation who need to be protected. The kind where they understand that humans are survivors who chose to be peaceful, not weaklings who had no other choice." Jiwoo smiled slightly. "I think it is about time," she said. "We have been polite for 50 years. Maybe now they will respect us too. She walked back toward the building, leaving Yuna alone with her thoughts. A few minutes later, Do-hyun appeared. He was carrying a small box, which he placed in Yuna's lap without explanation. "What is this?" she asked. "Open it." She opened the box. Inside was a pen. It was silver, like her old one, but better made. The metal was heavier, the balance perfect. It felt right in her hand, like it had been made just for her. "I had it custom ordered," Do-hyun said, sitting down next to her. "The metal is a special alloy, stronger than steel. It will not break or bend no matter how hard you throw it." Yuna looked at the pen, then at her friend. His face was a little red, like he was embarrassed. "Do-hyun, I know you like simple things," he said quickly. "But I thought, you saved everyone. You saved me. The least I can do is make sure you have a good pen." Yuna felt something warm in her chest. Not the cold focus of combat, but something else entirely. Something gentle. "Thank you," she said softly. "Also," Do-hyun added, "if any more aliens attack our school, now you will be even more prepared." Yuna laughed. It surprised her, the sound coming out of her mouth without permission. But it felt good. It felt normal. "You never know when you will need a good pen," she agreed. They sat together on the steps, watching the clouds drift across the sky. The future was uncertain. The galaxy had changed. Humans were seen differently now, for better or worse. But for this moment, Yuna felt at peace. She had her friend beside her. She had a new pen in her hand. And she had something she had not expected to find in all of this. Hope. Maybe humans and aliens could truly understand each other someday. Maybe the fear and suspicion would fade. Maybe what happened in that classroom would lead to something better. A galaxy where different species worked together not because they had to, but because they wanted to. It would not be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever was. But Yuna was human. And humans were very, very good at doing difficult things. She twirled the pen between her fingers and smiled at the sky. The story was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun.